Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambeau channel. Kim Jong-Gensler, supreme leader and dictator over at the SEC, had a very bad day. And as it turns out, there are some, even on his side of the political aisle, that are turning against him. And there are some in Congress who are actively seeking to have Gensler removed from office. And I'll tell you what, as somebody who has been following the SEC v. Ripple case for over 2.5 years, and we got the glorious ending that we wanted, at least as XRP holders, XRP being found to not be a security, even though the aspects of the case are still ongoing. As somebody who's been following on that, it is a true delight to see Gary Gensler get absolutely grilled today. I'll tell you what, Kim Jong-Gensler, he was on the struggle bus. He doesn't know how to answer 10 questions. So I'm going to share with you some of the most glorious highlights in this latest Moon Lambeau hot jam. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. Now, you will see as we go through this video that it's not just we here in the XRP community that have been crying out against Gensler. We're not the only ones that recognize just how repulsive an individual Gary Gensler is and how destructive his behavior has been. People at the highest levels of government also recognize this. So it should make you at least, at a bare minimum, make you feel like you haven't been taking crazy pills the last 2.5 years. You're absolutely correct. If you're able to sniff out that, yeah, there's something wrong here. And there's this article from the Crypto Basic it was published last night before the hearing. And it indicated that from Ripple's chief legal officer, Stuart Alderati, that a U.S. representative in Congress was set to read XRP non-security status ruling in front of Gary Gensler. And I didn't see that. I'd seen the bulk of what happened today. And I was like, did I just miss this? So I put out a post on social media platform X, and I wrote, during the Congressional hearing today in which Gensler was grilled, did anyone in Congress cite to Gensler that XRP has been deemed by the court to not be a security? And I've read a bunch of responses to this point, and so far nobody's responded that that has been done. There was one mention of XRP from a congressman. He was asking about... I can't remember the exact question, but it was more of a general question having to do with the SEC v. Ripple case. He wasn't grilling Gensler about XRP not being a security. And that's the only mention I'm aware of. And so shout out to XRP community member JV for sharing that. But yeah, I think that's the only mention, so far as I know anyway. And then there was also this from Stuart Alderati. And so this is from last night. The SEC chair, this is again before the hearing, the SEC chair will go to Congress tomorrow and lie by stating that there is such a thing as a crypto asset securities market, and tokens themselves are investment contracts. And this is amazing. And the reason he knew this last night, by the way, as is customary, opening remarks are actually shared ahead of the SEC chair actually giving them. And so you can see this aspect of the way that the SEC is going to market. It's exactly the same as before the devastating losses that the SEC has endured from the SEC v. Ripple case as well as the Grayscale case. But he's literally lying to the public and to everybody listening and to members of Congress. Stuart Alderati is not being unnecessarily aggressive. When he says that Gary Gensler is lying, that is literally what he's doing. This guy should not be in charge of anything. And then there was this from Financial Services GOP X account who wrote, and this is from this morning, ahead of today's hearing, all Republicans on the Financial Services Committee sent a letter to SEC Chair Gary Gensler slamming the agency for its failure to assess the cumulative impacts of its interconnected rulemakings. And so I'm telling you, it's not always the case that an opposing party challenges to this degree whoever is in charge of the SEC. That's not always the case. This is a unique moment in time. And you have, and that's why it's been fascinating. You even see, even though it's all, fine, there's a bit of towing the party line. I get that. It's the politics of it. It is what it is. But even so, there are Democrats that are pushing back against this SEC chair, which was, you can thank Biden for Gary Gensler having the position that he has now. He did get approved, of course, here. But during the hearing, there was a Congressman Richie Torres, not to be confused with Judge Annalisa Torres, just happens to be the same last name. And he was thrilled, by the way, to see that that XRP was deemed to be not a security, and that the SEC lost the most crucial matter in the SEC v. Ripple case. So credit where it's due. It's not the case that 100% of Republicans or 100% of Democrats are for or against crypto. It just happens to be the case that with this administration, the current administration, being broadly against crypto, and you can see that flowing through to a number of various government agencies, it's not surprising that you're seeing more on the other side, Republicans being more pro-crypto. Although I would argue that that's how it was even under the previous administration. It is what it is, and we could have a separate conversation about that, though probably not on this channel, because then we probably have to get into politics, and I don't really want to do that. I only touch on politics insofar as it pertains specifically to things having to do with finance and crypto, but I'm still observing this is indeed the case. And so all that to say, credit where it's due. And so here's a post from John Deaton's Crypto Law Organization sharing a clip of Congressman Richie Torres. And Crypto Law wrote, hearing, Congressman Richie Torres nails Gary Gensler on the lie that he is, quote, technology neutral, end quote, on crypto. Watch his eyes turn red after Torres says tokenized. And so, Rep. Torres asked Gary Gensler highly consequential questions, which, frankly, he was not prepared to answer. Gensler was not prepared to answer. He asked if an investment contract requires a contract, something we've been discussing within the XRP community for a long time now, probably pretty in depth for about a year at this point, ever since Ripple submitted their motion for summary judgment. That's when we saw the major argument came out from Ripple. How do you have an investment contract without an actual contract? And so it's a pretty basic thing, right? Well, Gensler then started citing prongs of the Howey test rather than answering yes or no. Just started naming prongs of the Howey test because reasons, folks. Rep. Torres then asked Gensler if he could cite a Supreme Court case in which they found that there was indeed an investment contract in the absence of an actual contract. And of course, we in the XRP community already know the answer is no. The Supreme Court absolutely did not find such. And Gary Gensler started dancing around talking about cases of whiskey because which had been part of an investment contract scheme, but that's also true of like chinchillas and Bitcoin and so on and so forth. Oranges, and he did this because he knew the answer to the question was no. He's being intentionally evasive. But look, he also knows that the truth harms his attempt to rule over all things crypto. So Rep. Torres then asked if Gensler could cite a single Second Circuit case where there was found to be an investment contract without a contract. And Gensler just straight up refused to answer. And of course the answer is no, which harms their position. And so this may remind some of you of, what was the name of this report? It's the Ineluctable Modality of Securities Laws, if I'm getting that right. And this is the one where they went back. I think it was attorney Lewis Cohen, if I remember the name correctly. He and his firm, he had some partners. They actually went through every single case law dating back to anything that was relevant. So I think it might have been back to 1946, but they may have actually pulled back even before Howey, going back to whatever the name of the Securities Act was in 32 or 33. So, but the point is, back to the beginning, went through literally with a fine-tooth comb every single case, and then presented that and said, here you go, Judge Torres. Here's everything. There is no such case. And so Gary Gensler knows this. He just doesn't want it to be true, and it harms his position. And so the fact that Rep. Torres highlighted this, I just thought it was absolutely fantastic. And here was a transcription, in fact, from this clip. This is from Rep. Torres. This is a question to which you should know the answer because the definition of an investment contract is the central issue. That's what determines the extent of your authority. That's what determines the applicability of federal securities law to crypto transactions, and your inability to answer that question is baffling to me, end quote. Whew. And again, this is somebody on the Democrat side railing against Gensler. Love to see it. That's intellectual honesty at its finest. Absolutely. And then we had Tom Emmer. Now, Congressman Tom Emmer stated publicly that XRP is not a security before the SEC even sued Ripple. So this is from back in the day. And so there's this post from Tom Emmer on X, and he wrote, "Fact, Gary Gensler is not an impartial regulator, and his answers to my questions today prove just that. He's made a career of being relentlessly loyal to the largest institutions in America at the clear expense of innovation, competition, and everyday Americans." And folks, this just makes me think, and he's right, but this makes me think back to what Attorney Deaton's been saying for years now, which is that for Gary Gensler, it's all about helping out the incumbents. Don't forget, he was at Goldman Sachs for 18 years. And so, Tom Emmer asked Gensler if most of his wealth was accumulated during his 18 years at Goldman Sachs. And Gensler responded by stating he has done well since then, too, and he kind of smirked, and some people in the room chuckled a little bit. But, why did Tom Emmer ask this? Well, here's the transcription highlighting the significance of the question. So this is directly from Congressman Emmer. "Given your 18 years your career at one of the biggest banks in the world and the personal financial fortune you amassed there, do you think it's possible for you to serve as an impartial regulator and not favor large financial intermediaries?" And so I'll pause note, at that point, Gensler responded yes, ultimately. And then Emmer later stated, he got all of this, because, the idea, say yes, it's absurd. Look at how he's behaving. What is he doing to help the little? It's all about the incumbents. Who's falling for this? And so then Emmer states later on, quote, it can't be understated that a common theme throughout your career, sir, is your relentless loyalty to the largest financial institutions at the clear expense of innovation, competition, and everyday Americans. Golf clap for Congressman Emmer, everybody. Because he's talking about me and perhaps you here if you're an American. But even if you're not American, if you're an XRP holder, this has obviously impacted you. But the point is, we're the little guys out there. What Gary Gensler has been doing, and I know it was started by Jay Clayton, previous SEC chair, but what Gary Gensler has been doing has been harming my net worth. That is what he's been doing. He's not helping me. Really grinds my gears, son. It grounds up good. Then we have this. This is Congressman Warren Davidson. And he said Gary Gensler's tenure at the SEC highlights two key problems. Number one, a Gary Gensler problem, and two, SEC structural problem. That's why I introduced the SEC Stabilization Act to fire Gary Gensler and restructure the SEC. And so this actually dates back to June of this year, so just a few months ago. Here's a headline from Cointelegraph. Breaking, U.S. lawmakers file SEC Stabilization Act to fire Gary Gensler. And so this is still moving forward. It was cited to his face today. Hey, we're trying to fire you, just so you know, Gary. Okay, bye. And it was truly delightful. I rather enjoyed this, actually. But it's so nice seeing, Gary Gensler just have to squirm for all the shady nonsense that he's been doing, harming people financially. Here's a post from Fox Business journalist Eleanor Terrett. Gensler responds to Congressman Josh Gottheimer's question as to why the SEC hasn't done any rulemaking for crypto. Quote, because there's rules and laws in the books that apply to crypto security tokens like they apply to other tokens. There's nothing incompatible just because you're storing something of value on a blockchain ledger, end quote. Now, folks, see, that part sounds the same. Well, it's already very clear, right? Everything's already understood. Which is interesting. And actually, another thing, I think it was Rep. Torres that brought this up. But he's like, and I could be mistaken, I'm pretty sure it was Rep. Torres that said this, but he asked Gensler, if I buy a security card, he said if somebody buys a security card, or rather a Pokemon, if somebody buys a Pokemon card, is that a security? And Gary easily answered no. He had no trouble just saying outright no. So there you go. If you purchase a Pokemon card, is that a security? In and of itself, no. And then he asked, okay, what if somebody purchases an NFT, which is a Pokemon card? So it would be representing the Pokemon card. And then Gary Gensler didn't so easily answer no. You know what he said? He said, well, it depends on the facts and the circumstances, blah, 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 I'm stupid, blah, 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 blah. That's what he said in response. And so obviously, he's not being technology neutral there, is he? It's not about the nature of the transaction. He's against the technology. That perfectly illustrated it. Freaking idiot stick. Here we have Congressman Patrick McHenry, and he posted on X, SEC Chair Gary Gensler continues his blatant disregard for Congress in pursuit of a radical agenda that threatens the integrity of our financial markets, protection of investors, and our economic competitiveness. Our patience is wearing thin. Yeah, and he, by the way, I'll just note, he literally stated to Gary Gensler to his face, our patience is wearing thin. And so Rep. Patrick McHenry states that if Congress does not comply with requests from, if Gensler and the SEC does not comply with requests from Congress, that he may issue a subpoena to the SEC in an attempt to force the agency to comply, and that would be a first instance of such in history. The SEC has never been issued a subpoena, ever. And we're about there. That's how bad this is. You know, and it was like pulling teeth when McHenry asked Gensler if Bitcoin is a security. Because he did that. Yes, is Bitcoin a security? And Gensler eventually said no, but wouldn't say if Bitcoin is a commodity or some other type of asset. He wouldn't say that. He just couldn't do it. Apparently, Gensler doesn't know what the hell Bitcoin is, which is absurd. Who believes this crap? Fox Business journalist Eleanor Terrett also wrote the following. Chairman Patrick McHenry coming in hot out the gate, criticizing Gary Gensler's lack of response to oversight requests. And he said, quote, "You've done nothing to remedy legitimate and bipartisan concerns. That is disgraceful. Our patience is wearing thin." There's also this from Eleanor Terrett. Chairman McHenry asks, "What is it about Bitcoin that makes it not a security?" And that was the quote. Gensler, after trying to dodge, quote, "It does not meet the Howey test, which is the law of the land for being a security." So there you go. Gensler says it's not a security, but he also doesn't know what the hell it is. Duh, I don't know. That's the hard question. Here you have Attorney John Deaton responding to all of this, and he said, "I think Patrick McHenry is great. I really do. And I accept the fact that I'm naive or even ignorant to the long-standing customs and practices of the FSC, Financial Services Committee, and other congressional committees. I've always suspected that issuing a subpoena was seen as a line in the sand being crossed that each side tries to avoid, almost as if there's an unwritten agreement between the two parties. It's why I hate politics so much. Gary Gensler is a bad faith bureaucrat. He has hurt investors, not protected them. The fact that the FSC hasn't seen anything the rest of us haven't is disturbing and unacceptable. Issue the damn subpoena, please. Pretty please, with sugar on top." Yep, spot on, Attorney Deaton. That's what we all want. And it is bizarre, is it not? Everything that's public-facing that we've seen, that's the extent of what members of Congress have seen as well. That's it. What? I mean, and I think it was McHenry that noted this. I'm pretty darn sure. He said, earlier in the year we were requesting this and that, and the only thing they've got is stuff from FOIA requests. That's it. The SEC has given nothing else. Here you have a post from Eleanor Terrett. She wrote, Representative Ann Wagner addresses Gensler's change in views over tech over the years. And so Congresswoman Wagner said, quote, "Which Gary Gensler should the American public believe? The academic version or the SEC version who thinks all use of technology is inherently conflicted?" End quote. Gensler says he is the same Gary Gensler. Yeah, well, I have to request, would the real Gary Gensler please stand up? Because I'm not so confident that I've said many times over the last couple of years that I would love to see, 2018 era Gary Gensler debate the current SEC Kim Jong Gensler. I would love to see those two debate because they are at odds with one another and they completely disagree on key ideas. Including the fact that XRP, prior to the ruling anyway, didn't have regulatory clarity. Because we have video of Gary Gensler saying that in, I believe it was 2018. I covered it at the time when it started circulating throughout our community anyway. He knows this. He's a lying liar. That is what lying liars do. Little bitch-ass bitch. Here we have another post from Eleanor Terrett, who wrote, Ranking Member Representative... Oh, Maxine Waters. What a piece of work she is. Ranking Member Maxine Waters finished her line of questioning on crypto by stating her colleagues across the aisle protect crypto firms too often in too many different ways. Maxine Waters, who famously called Bitcoin Bitcom, gotta get me some of them Bitcoms, she thinks that the crypto stuff's bad because she knows about the Webernets. Thank you for nothing, Maxine Waters. You know nothing about it. and you're obviously towing the party line. This is garbage. That is the stance that harms holders of any cryptocurrency on the planet. It's disgusting to see. Here's another post from Eleanor Turret, Rep at Wiley Nickel. This is Wiley Nickel. Okay, I did say that right. Asked Gensler if he plans to approve the pending Bitcoin spot ETF applications now that the courts have rejected the agency's rationale for rejecting grayscales. Gensler says they're still considering the appellate court decision, and he doesn't want to get ahead of the staff of the commissioners. I bet you don't. See, here's the thing. I don't think that Gary Gensler himself wants to approve anything, but I still think that it's going to happen. When you have BlackRock coming in, there's a reason they're in. There's going to be a path forward here. And on top of that, I say Gary Gensler didn't want to approve this. What I was really thinking I can be more precise than that. It's that when it comes to the crypto, I guess you could call them crypto incumbents. Those are the firms he's against. I don't get the sense that he's against BlackRock. So if BlackRock's, I want to come in and play in the that box too. Well, he's probably just going to be like, all right, here you go. Here's the keys of the kingdom. Wouldn't be surprised in the least. And then there was this from Eleanor Turret. To close out the Gary Gensler hearing, Congressman Andy Ogles drops in the second analogy of the day in reference to Gensler not answering questions. And I do love this one. He said, quote, I've sat back here and listened to this entire hearing. Dude, you wear tap dancing shoes better than Fred Astaire, and enough is enough. Gotta love that one. A little punk guy with a bitch. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.